perform for San Jose Jazz Fest. It's a pleasure to now have a word with them about their music, their career, their work. Um, ¿Qué tal? Hello, I'm Beto Arcos. A pleasure to be with you tonight on this wonderful evening after seeing the amazing Villalobos brothers perform for San Jose Jazz Fest. It's a pleasure to now have a word with them about their music, their career, their work. Um, y bienvenidos, desde luego.
Thank you, Beto.
Holding the violin is Alberto Villalobos, and on the right hand is none other than Nes, also known as Ernesto Villalobos.
Hola.
¿Qué tal? How are you guys?
Doing great. Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
So it just so happens that you guys are from the same town as I am.
The same exact city, yes.
Jalapa, Veracruz. Jalapa, the capital of the state of Veracruz. So I cannot tell you how excited I am to finally do an interview with you guys, because I've known about you for many years. And it's, you know, I've heard about your story and read interviews and heard interviews, and I said, okay, I'll have an opportunity to talk to them. And so this is...
Same here, Beto, same here. You're a legend. The legendary Beto Arcos. It's an honor for us.
Órale, gracias, gracias. So you guys grew up in, probably, in my humble opinion, one of the most musical cities, not just in Mexico, anywhere, because let's just say it out loud. Jalapa happens to be, it was sort of nicknamed many years ago, called the Athens of Veracruz, because a lot of the arts come together in particularly in Jalapa. I mean, I grew up watching, going to concerts to the Jalapa Symphony Orchestra. I went to see the jazz band Orbis Tertius, the salsa orchestra, and of course, there's also a lot of great music in the streets and clubs and everything. Tell me briefly, what was your upbringing like? How did you finally, eventually, maybe when you were little, get into music?
Beto, we come from a family that skipped a generation. In other words, our parents are not musicians, but our grandma was a huge musical aficionado. So she, there was not a year that went by that she didn't go to Tlacotalpan, which is the capital of Son Jarocho. And in many occasions we joined her. So she played guitar, she played the accordion, which is the instrument that you saw me playing tonight, and the violin. And she really had a huge influence on us. She would sing, she had a beautiful voice, and they called her Señora Nostalgia. She would sing at the Casita Agustín Lara. And she would have a beautiful voice, but she never knew the difference between do, re, or mi. She had no idea of any notes or of any theory. but her music was so pure in that way, because sometimes the education is a very powerful tool, but it taints the enjoyment.
And I have to say this, some of the best musicians I know,
of course,
have no notions of theory or history.
Of
They
course.
are just trained in
empirical
right?
musicians,
or come from from los campesinos, the music from the earth, from Son Jarocho, from Son Huasteco. It comes from a tradition of passed down through generations, and that's how, in a way, she was trained.
Yeah.
And when we started musical training formally at the Universidad Veracruzana in Jalapa, our teacher,
the University of Veracruz,
we started with classical violin and all that, and she was very happy. But she was the happiest whenever we had the chance to play together, jam in the kitchen table, and we would learn traditional folk tunes from her. She would say like, "Oh, this is an old tune that I used to say," and she would sing La Leva, or she would sing El Tecolote, or all tunes that she learned and she could play, and we would play along, and that was our beginning or start in folk music in all this tradition.
Can you demonstrate briefly a little bit of one song maybe that she taught you, that she used to play?
Yeah, I mean, La Leva is an old tune.
This is a Son Huasteco. This is a particular music style from the northeast of Mexico, in an area that covers around 7 states, one of them being Veracruz.
Beto, is that a guapanguera? Is that a guapanguera
This
behind
is
us?
in fact a guitarra guapanguera or quinta
La quinta
guapanguera, as it's
guapanguera,
called.
la
It's
quinta
one of the
guapanguera.
three instruments that are part of the son huasteco, as you guys know.
Yeah, so you guys saw me play El Hilo there in the concert. I was playing La Guapanguera, and usually it's played in a trio with the other small guitar you have up there, the Jarana Huasteca, and the violin. The violin playing an important role, bringing up the melody and setting the pace where the singing starts and the melody and the zapateado starts. So it goes for something like this.
Échale, Beto.
That I have to admit here publicly. I think I may have said it already once. My heart is much closer to son huasteco than it is to son jarocho. Don't ask me why.
My heart is divided, but definitely I grew up very close, being a violin player, very close to Son Huasteco, and I just love it so much. And the violin being such an important player in Son Huasteco is in Son Jarocho too. In some communities in los Tuxtlas, I believe the violin is an important
That's right.
instrument,
Yeah.
but not this particular violin, but the violin Tuxteco, which is more. It's a different instrument in itself. You know?
Completely. So that was sort of the foundation for your sort of musical education, for your interest in music. You were little, you were growing up in your hometown, my hometown too, and then at one point, Ernesto Ness
Yes.
makes a move to the Big Apple, where in fact
I
you
would
are
be
right now in Brooklyn, to New
in
York.
Brooklyn. Yes.
What happened next?
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Maestro Carlos Marrufo, because he was our teacher, our violin teacher, and really he became a father figure, like a second father figure for us for many, many years. In my case, he taught me violin since the age of 6 until the age of 18, so 12 years of musical formation under him. And by the time I was 18, there was this open call to come and audition at Palacio de Bellas Artes, which is our Mexican Carnegie Hall, the equivalent.
Yeah.
And so I made it to Palacio de Bellas Artes, which is the Palace of Fine Arts, and I won a Fulbright scholarship to come study in New York City.
Wow, that's a
But
big
it was
leap.
through the
That's a big jump. I mean, going from Jalapa to Bellas Artes is already big.
yes,
and
yes,
then
yes,
and then
yes, and
after
then
that, you take a bigger jump.
yes, come to New York and come really, to do my master's with all expenses paid. The amount of dollars that it cost to enroll in the Manhattan School of Music and to pay for a master's was inconceivable. I remember my father kind of crunching numbers and just like, he was mute in disbelief. He just opened a bottle of cider, not even alcoholic, but he was just like pouring cider, and we just couldn't believe how much money that was, what it meant to get a full scholarship for the Manhattan School of Music, which is of course one of the top conservatories in the world, and to come, with all expenses paid. This was back in the year 2000, and it changed my life. It changed my life completely.
I can imagine. And then you get an opportunity to perform at that place called Carnegie Hall.
We call it carne y frijol.
Carne y frijol. Okay, correction. And so, this is a time when you feel like you want to make a statement. I mean, you have an opportunity to be on one of the worlds, because let's face it, Bellas Artes is our Carnegie Hall in Mexico. You have an opportunity to make a statement, a musical statement about what you do, and that's when you call your brothers and you tell them, "Hey guys, get over here."
Yeah, I have to tell you, Beto, we grew up very close in age. We were about a year and a half, but Nes was always leading. He was setting an example. We were, my younger brother Luis, who is currently in Valencia, by the way. Hi, Luis. I'm sure we call him West. I'm sure he's watching. But we were following his steps. In a way, he was setting the pace, and that made us work really hard because he was, you saw he was so talented. And at that time, I remember we both Luis and I auditioned and got scholarships from the FONCA, which is the National Endowment for the Arts. And
In
I got a
Mexico?
scholarship to go to study abroad also in Brussels, in Belgium. So I was living in Europe at the time, also pursuing a classical music career. But everything shifted when we got this opportunity and we decided to start writing and composing music, because that opened up a whole new perspective. At the time, I was already feeling nostalgic. 3 years in Europe, not listening to a lot of folk music. In Mexico, I only had a couple of CDs because back then Spotify wasn't a thing. So I had a couple of CDs, and my grandma would send me cassette tapes, you know, the old cassette tapes with recordings. And I would treasure those recordings, and I would play them over and over with son huasteco, with sones jaliscienses, with soles de tierra caliente, and I would feel like I was home, you know, I was very homesick. So at the first chance that we had to come and start writing music, obviously the music that I wrote was heavily influenced by being nostalgic about Mexico and wanting to come back and learn more about your own traditions. It's funny how you sometimes value more what you don't have at the time, and when you have it right there, you're not appreciative of that powerful music. So the
Absolutely.
first chance we got, we came back and we started digging deep, as I did in the Huasteca. I lived there for about a year, and I met the great masters, Elfego Villegas, who just passed this year, and all these musical greats.
So, how did you manage to bring together this sort of confluence of traditional roots music from Mexico, that classical training that you have? Because I noticed one thing when you just played that tune on the violin. I'm hearing the Huasteco, but I'm also hearing classical. I mean, am I not hearing it?
No, you're definitely right, and I think that's the challenge, you know, because sometimes I remember like learning the style, you start like, this doesn't sound right, you know, you have to make it a little dirty, you have to make it, it has to taste like it's real, otherwise it's just not that. But also you have to, and the way I see it is, we all have different experiences in life, and we become a reflection of our experiences. And our experience happens to be brought up in classical music, but living in New York City and having all these connections and friendships and collaborations, we also felt permeated by all these different musical influences. And growing up in Mexico, obviously, your brain starts coming back to that, you know, to that flavor, to those feelings, to those sounds,
Yeah.
of growing
Yeah.
up surrounded by that music. And
Yeah.
it's impossible not to do that. At the same time, I have the utmost respect for purists and traditional folk musicians who are devoted to only that type of music, you know, because it's something I could not do purely in that style.
We were just talking about it the other day. Remember, we were saying, well, you know, if your day is working in the fields and you pick up a handmade violin, and this is the sound that comes out, you're being true to who you are. This is the best. This is your offering. This is what you're offering to the world, right? And in our case, it's like being honest. You know, just be honest with who you are. Put out an honest expression of who you are. And we happen to be these hybrids, you know, that came from the classical music, that came from Jalapa, but who are now living in New York in a world where we have friends of every cultural background, and it's incredible. And so our ear is still in the fandangos in Veracruz, but oftentimes, classical music is a very powerful tool. It's like learning how to read, perhaps, or how to write. So you have this refined tool that you can now use to create incredible art in the tradition that formed you, or where you come from originally.
Now you mentioned Fandango from Veracruz. You were going to play, you have a jarana, right? And I wonder if you could play something on your jarana, because while you get ready, I'm really impressed that you guys are basically Renaissance guys. I mean, you play all kinds of instruments, right? You play accordion, right? You play violin. I'm sure you play guitar. What don't you play?
We don't play any woodwind or brass instruments. I would love to learn how to play the trumpet or maybe the saxophone, but it's maybe in our next life.
Yeah. Tell us about the jarana. It's an 8-string instrument.
So this is and actually the one that you just listened at the concert. This is a jarana. It was a present, it's jarana tercera. So they come in different sizes, and this is a traditional instrument from Veracruz, from the south, from Sotavento. Traditionally made in one single piece of cedar, which is a common tree down there. Very soft and smells great. And this was a present from Jorge Castillo, the organizer of Fandango Fronterizo in Tijuana.
Ah, of course, mi amigazo también.
Years ago, we went there with the Afro Latin Jazz Orchestra led by Arturo Farrell, and we were invited to play at the border wall that divides San Diego and Tijuana. By the way, there's a documentary out there just aired last week or 2 weeks ago
On
about
HBO.
Max. It's called Fandango at the Wall. It's a beautiful production that highlights the son jarocho musicians, some of the masters that gather every year at the wall and that have brought great enthusiasm for the genre in California and all over the world. So we were featured guests for part of the tour, and we were blessed to collaborate with many of the
Wonderful
musicians,
musicians,
Regina Carter, Antonio Sanchez, and then Jorge. We were talking, and he was like, "Beto, you need a jarana. Let me give you this jarana." And he gave me his jarana, and it's such a beautiful human being, Jorge Castillo. And then I kept it, and what I played right now at the concert was our own version of Pájaro Cú. You know, Pájaro Cú is a traditional son jarocho, traditionally in a major key. You know, major key is like a... No? But I made a Pájaro Cú menor in minor key, so I'm sure you probably recognize it. And it goes something like this. It's just a whole other. It's the same tune, but at the same time, it adds a different chords and a different atmosphere. It changes the mood, and I just thought it was a beautiful tune to get inspired, write new verses, and create something different. You know?
It must be said this instrument, the jarana, and the entire family of instruments that are from this particular region go back about 300 years in history. They're actually precede the acoustic 6-string guitar, and they're really sort of Baroque instruments, as they were almost. They were there. I've talked to musicians that play ancient music, older, Baroque music, and they told me that the instruments are very much the same in terms of the way that they used to be played. Obviously they're carved out of one piece, whereas the modern Baroque guitars are not, but it's still very much in that from that tradition. So finally, because we're sort of running out of time, you have a new record out. The latest one is called Somos, and tell us a bit about this record and sort of what's the inspiration or the concept behind it.
Well, I can tell you about you can.
Yeah, Somos is the title track. It's a song written by our youngest brother Luis, who happens to be in Valencia right now. And the album itself was such a pain to create. It took us so many years, and the reason is that there's not a single track that was click tracked. So everything was just organically recorded as we felt it. You know how in the studios it's very common to use the click track, and for this album none of the tracks has that. So everything went with the groove of our incredible drummer Rosa Avila, and of our bass player Leo Sherman, and it has many influences. It has obviously the influence of son Huasteco with the song La Leva, which Beto arranged, and it has the influence of son jarocho with a song that I wrote called Veracruzana. And on top of that, it has many songs that speak of current social justice issues against police brutality. There is one that talks about the 43 missing students of Ayotzinapa and some other causes that we hold dear to our heart. But it's overall, I think it's a document of our times pre-pandemic, of all the touring that we were doing, and really of a reflection of our brotherhood.
It's also,
Wonderful.
we have the great Arturo Fire on piano on Jalapa Bank, the track you were mentioning that Luis wrote about police brutality. I remember when he wrote that track, he was talking about police brutality in the state of Oaxaca.
Right.
And eventually, police brutality came to Jalapa. And that's when he decided to call it Jalapa Bank. Not too long ago, we were listening and reading the news, and police were using force to repress student manifestations.
And this was way before George Floyd, way
Yeah.
before any of the current events in the
Yeah.
U.S. You know, but
And at the time, I wrote "Hombres de Arcilla, Men of Clay," the song that speaks about the 43 disappeared students from Ayotzinapa. This had just happened, so this is 5 years ago now.
when you wrote the song.
When I wrote
yeah.
the song, but it took us a while. It took me a while to write it, then to record it, eventually to produce a video that we're still waiting to finish.
Yeah,
but
COVID
it's
really messed with our schedule.
Yeah, definitely. But you know, like the topics that are still current. Police brutality is still an issue. The 43
Yeah.
still haven't been found, and we're still in waiting and demanding justice for these people and for these families. So in a way, those are still hot topics that we can still talk about and discuss, and
But
hopefully.
it's so great that you guys combine all of these things into your music, because the reality is we are living in a complicated and difficult time, and especially now, I don't, I'm sure people understand music can certainly help us cope with the reality that we're living today. So I really want to thank you for your time, for your energy, for your music, and just finally, what's next?
What's next? I really wish to continue our collaboration with incredible musicians, not only in Mexico, in the US, anywhere really in the world now, in this digital world. That seems to be the future. We're doing a collaboration with Latino Arts on November 2nd for Dia de Muertos, Day of the Dead. Please log in. And we're going to be creating a curriculum for Carnegie Hall for the spring semester for children of all ages.
We'll be also doing a few concerts next summer after everything kind of normalizes, hopefully. With a symphonic project that we premiered last year with the San Francisco Symphony. So we'll be taking that to Walla Walla, Washington, to
the
Santa
Sun
Barbara,
Valley, to the Sun Valley Orchestra,
and Idaho, I believe. A few dates
with symphony orchestras
already booked for 2021 in the summer. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Please stay tuned. Yeah, we would love to stay in touch.
Super. You want to play something briefly to sort of say goodbye?
Of course.
Yeah.
Maybe something together? Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Saludos.
All right. Absolutely.
Gracias.